Explainer. Okay, I am absolutely pumped to be here with you today because we're about to completely flip the script on how you tackle self-improvement. We're diving into the ridiculously pragmatic and effective framework from James Clear's Atomic Habits. Seriously, if you've ever felt stuck in a rut or super frustrated that you just can't make a new routine stick, well, this explainer is literally made for you. We're going to get into the actual science of how our daily behaviors are wired under the hood.
But first, I'm going to ask you to do something that sounds kind of backwards. I want you to completely forget about your goals. Yep, just throw them right out the window for a second. You see, failing at our habits, that's a system problem, not a willpower problem. The source material hits the nail on the head here. We're constantly beating ourselves up, right? Thinking we just lack discipline. But the reality is, bad habits repeat themselves because your internal machinery, your system, is practically begging them to.
All right, let's dive into this. We live in a world that is frankly obsessed with outcomes. We're conditioned to just stare at the finish line. Losing 10 pounds, writing that book, saving 10 grand. Those are your goals. But here's the massive paradigm shift. Goals only tell you where you want to go. Systems, those little daily processes and routines, those are what actually get you there. Think about it. When you obsess over the goal, you're basically putting off your happiness until you cross that finish line. But when you focus on the system, you actually fall in love with the process of getting a tiny bit better every single day.
So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover 1. Forget about your goals. 2. The 1% rule. 3. Identity over outcomes. 4. The core habit loop. 5. Building good daily habits. And finally 6. Breaking bad daily habits. Over the next few minutes, we're literally handing you the toolkit to master your routines.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Forget about your goals. Daily habits over lifetime transformations. We do this thing where we convince ourselves that massive success absolutely requires massive action. We think, oh, I need this seismic, once-in-a-lifetime transformation to become the person I want to be. But the source material makes this so incredibly clear. True success isn't some grand single event. No way. It's the steady, compounding product of your daily habits. It's those small, almost invisible choices we're making from the second we wake up to the minute we go to sleep.
Which naturally brings us to Section 2, the 1% rule, the math of improvement.
Okay, this is where the magic happens. We brush off small changes all the time because honestly, they don't seem like a big deal in the moment. You save $5 today, you're not a millionaire. You hit the gym 3 days in a row, you're still out of shape. But what happens if we zoom out and look at the math? If you can manage to get just 1% better every single day, mathematically, those tiny marginal gains compound. By the end of 1 year, you weren't just slightly better, you become exactly 37.78 times better. I mean, let that sink in. That is the mind-blowing power of compounding daily habits.
So, how on earth do we make sure those tiny little changes actually stick around? Enter Section 3, Identity over Outcomes, the 3 layers of change. It turns out behavior change works a lot like an onion. The outermost layer, that's your outcomes, the what, like say losing weight. The middle layer is your processes, the how, like starting that new gym routine. But the deepest, absolutely most crucial layer right at the core, that's your identity, the who. If you really want habits to last long-term, you got to build identity-based habits, not outcome-based ones. You aren't just reading a book, you are becoming a reader. When you shift that shared identity, it reinforces your personal identity, and suddenly, the new behavior just feels completely natural.
Now that we know we have to tackle our identity, how do we actually mechanically change the behavior? Welcome to Section 4, the core habit loop, the engine under the hood. Now, what's incredibly fascinating is how every single habit follows this exact same 4-step path. It's the mechanical science driving everything we do. First, you got a cue, a trigger telling your brain to kickstart a behavior. Second is the craving. That's the motivational juice, the desire behind the habit. Third is the response, the actual action you take. And finally, the reward, the prize that satisfies the craving. Every habit, whether it's building a business or eating too much junk food, is driven by this exact sequential loop. Understanding that engine is great, but actually driving the car is where your life changes. Let's move into Section 5, Building Good Daily Habits, the action plan. Here's the real secret sauce. We take those 4 mechanical phases and turn them into ultra-pragmatic rules. If you want to build a rock-solid habit, you got to play along with the loop. For the cue, the rule is to make it obvious. For the craving, make it attractive. For the response, make it easy. And for the reward, make it satisfying. Seriously, if a positive behavior is failing to become a habit for you,
I guarantee it's breaking down at one of these 4 stages.
Let's put this into rapid-fire action. First, make it obvious, using habit stacking. That means saying, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute. Next, use environment design, like keeping one space for one specific use. To make it attractive, try temptation building. Pair something you love, like watching Netflix, with something you need to do, like running on the treadmill. To make it easy, embrace the brilliantly simple 2-minute rule. Any new habit should take less than 2 minutes to do, because listen, repetition beats perfection every time. And finally, make it satisfying with a personal loyalty program. Skip buying that overpriced coffee? Instantly transfer that $5 into a savings account for an immediate win.
Now, checking off those boxes and measuring progress feels fantastic, doesn't it? But the source material drops a huge warning flag here called Goodhart's Law. It states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. A habit tracker is a brilliant tool to measure your consistency. But if you become obsessed with just the metric, like you're just checking the box to keep an arbitrary streak alive without actually caring about the quality of the habit, well, the measure has failed you. Keep track of your progress for sure, but don't ever lose sight of the actual identity you're trying to build.
All right, we've got the good stuff dialed in, but what about those pesky routines holding us back? Let's pivot to our final phase, Section 6, Breaking Bad Daily Habits, Inverting the Rules. To utterly dismantle a bad habit, you literally just invert those 4 rules. It's brilliant. Make the cue invisible by cutting off your exposure. Like literally have a friend lock you out of your social media accounts until Friday. Make the craving unattractive by completely reframing your mindset around the negative impacts. Make the response difficult by jacking up the friction. Add a ton of annoying steps before you can actually do the bad habit. And finally, make the reward unsatisfying by creating a painful public contract. You want the immediate consequence to massively outweigh any tiny, fleeting moment of pleasure.
Bringing this all together, this source material gives us this absolute master map. It's like the entire blueprint of human behavior change right here. When you finally stop obsessing over those distant, stressful goals and instead just focus on tuning up your daily system. Building identity, leveraging that 4-step loop, stacking your habits, and leaning into the 2-minute rule. Monumental success completely stops being this lucky accident. It becomes practically inevitable. Because at the end of the day, you aren't just changing what you do. You are systematically changing who you are.
So I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on today. Really take a hard look at the systems running your day. Notice those tiny frictions, the invisible cues, the little routines you just do on autopilot. What if you stopped stressing over massive overnight transformations and instead focused entirely on improving those daily systems by just 1% starting right now? Who will you be exactly 1 year from today? Thanks for hanging out with me on The Explainer, and I absolutely cannot wait to dive into our next topic with you.